Okay, friends, this is Dr. Lou. This is our final episode on a series of conversation we've been having on African American religious studies. This is number five, I believe, number five episode. The first one was on some key texts on Black theology. The second one was some key studies on the Black church studies. The third one was some key studies on the relationship between African American religion and political and social activism. And this is the final one. The final one, actually, this is number four, not number five. The final one, I want to bring your attention to, some classic text, right? Some of those texts are very general texts, but they're monographed. They're very specific on the topic they address. But there are some key texts I'm going to bring your attention to in Black religious studies or African American religious studies. It's important for you, for me to remind you, I am not going to repeat the texts that I've already explored in my previous conversations, the three conversations on Black theology, Black church studies, and Black church political uh, activism. Okay. Now I want to begin with the spirituals. See, the spirituals, and of course, I have two key texts I'm going to bring your attention to: the spirituals and the blues. We must begin with this work. Okay. As you know, many of you have already known the spirituals were religious work songs of hope that began in the time of slavery and after the time of slavery. So James Weldon Johnson, the great African American novelist and poet, compiled together in 1925 a collection of the spirituals, the Negro spirituals, and the spirituals were also uh, folk songs, okay, of African American, of the African American people. He and his brother put this together in 1925. It's actually now originally this was published as a two-volume work, but here you have the two-volume combined, okay. The books of American, excuse me, the book of American Negro spirituals, the book of American Negro spirituals. Um, Great. Then the great James H. Cone, the father of Black liberation theology, wrote an exciting book, an energetic book on the history of the relationship between the spirituals and the blues. Great analysis. Okay, so from the spiritual, we're gonna start the spirituals, text on the spirituals, I should have said. We're gonna look at some text. Okay, the the three major studies, and of course, before I mention this text, I should say this, and I should say this. W.E.B. Du Bois has contributed significantly to the study of African American religion, both in time of slavery and after slavery. You begin with the souls of black folk uh, and his own studies, on his ideas on religion. Okay, So you begin with Du Bois even before I present uh, this classic text. Um, okay, slave religion, the invisible institution in antebellum South by Raboto. Albert Raboto. Um, slave religion. Again, this is really the classic text. You know, I just said this is where you began. The beginning, the birth of African American religion in the diaspora. Diaspora where? In the United States. This is it right here. A landmark study. Okay. Now, although this book is not what we call a typical work on black church study, or I mean on black religion, I should say, but it's a significant, it's a landmark study on religion, including African American religion. It's written by the great African American religious scholar Charles H. Long. Okay, Charles H. Long. It's called Significations, Signs, Symbols, and Images in the Interpretation of Religion. Sign, right? Significations, signs, symbols, and images in the interpretation of religion. Great text. Um, it is rich in theory. Albert Raboto has also published A Fire in the Bonds. A Fire in the Bonds, which is his reflection on the religious history of African American religion. Fire and the Bond. Okay. Great text. Another classic. Anything Raboto writes is a classic. I might be biased, I'm sorry. An important text that explores what the author calls the biblical formation of Black America. That means how the Bible has influenced African Americans. Is written by Theophilus Smith. It's called Conjuring Culture, Biblical Formation of Black America. Talking about biblical formation of America, this text is significant. It's called African Americans in the Bible, the relationship between African Americans and the Bible. Great text. This is an anthology. You know, this is a major text. In fact, there's a book that just came out. I have it in my library. It's a major work. Right? It's a major work. Not only, I just mentioned two texts on the relationship between Black Americans and the Bible. But this text I'm going to show is going to become a classic. It's by New Testament scholar Lisa M. Bowens. African American readings of Paul. Reception, resistance, and transformation. African American readings of Paul. Reception, resistance, and transformation. This is a landmark study. This book has been endorsed by the great New Testament scholar from Duke University, Richard B. Hayes, Michael Gorman, the great Pauline scholar, and of course Peter Jim Paris and Mark Knoll. Important text. Again, we're still talking about the relationship between the Bible, how African American African Americans interpret the Bible in light of their struggle for freedom, and also in light of their of their culture, the Afro-American culture, right, which their ancestors brought to America. Okay, another classic is Eddie Glaude, Exodus, which explores the intersection of religion, race, and nation. Okay, nationality in early 19th century Black America. Here it is. This is a brilliant study. Okay, again, the idea of Exodus means exit, emancipation, liberation. Okay, again, in this text, he compares the historical uses of the Exodus event by African Americans and white Americans and their concepts of nation. Okay? Concept of nation. Now, Wilson, Jeremiah, Moses, everything, almost everything this guy writes, I like. I may have, I guess, may have possessed everything he has written. When I was doing my PhD in African American intellectual history, my my supervisor, the guy who under whom I did in African American intellectual history, had me read almost everything by Wilson, Jeremiah, Moses. So, Black Messiahs and Uncle Tom's, Black Messiahs and Uncle Tom's social and literary manipulation of a religious myth. Social and literary manipulation of a religious myth. Again, religious myth, I should say. This book not only it begins with the concept of messianism, okay, sacred and secular, not only in African American tradition but outside of it, and then he looks at the African roots of that tradition, the tradition of messianism. Then he looks at the idea of the myth of Uncle Tom and the messianic mission of the black race. Uh, then there's his commentary on Booker T. Washington, which he dubs as a black Moses. And then there's a chapter on Marcus Garvey, the resurrection of the Negro and the redemption of Africa. There's a chapter on Du Bois. There's a chapter on Joe Louis and Martin Luther King. And there's a chapter on Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. This is one of the novels you should read before you die. And there is a comparative chapter on Martin, Muhammad, and Malcolm, right? And the subtitle is called Political Revivalism in the 60s. Again, Black Messianism and American Destiny. A brilliant, just a brilliant, a provocative, interdisciplinary work. There's a book by Sterling Starkey on Black religion and Black culture. I have it in my library. For some reason, I forgot to bring it with me. This is a classic text, okay, on the subject matter by Sterling Starkey. It's somewhere in my bookshelf. I want to bring your attention to anthologies on African American religious thought. Now, and I have in my library the four major African American anthologies on Black religion. Again, the first one, I'm showing you was edited by Cornel Rest by and Eddie S. Claude. It's called African American Religious Thought. It's a major work. African American Religious Studies. This is an interdisciplinary anthology. This one was edited by the great Will Moore. And another one, Afro American Religious History. This is a documentary witness. So this is really for people who are into history, the relationship between religion and history. Then this was edited by Milton Cernet. Milton Cernet. Then the last anthology I want to bring your attention to, it's called African American Religion, Interpretive Essays in History and Culture by Timothy Furlap and Albert Raboto. Okay, there are two major texts on African American Islam, and of course the classic by C. Eric Lincoln. Eric Lincoln is one of the authors who has written one of the classics on Black church studies, which I went over in my first episode. So the Black Muslims in America. And the second one I want to bring your attention to on Black on African American Islam. It's called African American Islam. African American Islam by Emina Beverly McLeod. Okay. Then there are two important texts on Black humanism. Okay, African American humanism, written. Well, the first one is an anthology written by, and of course by Noam Allen Jr. So this is a group of, a group of people like Du Bois, Zora Neale Hurston, and some major thinkers in African American not only religious thought but also intellectual history. Hubert Harrison, Frederick Douglass. So this is a collection of essays. It's an anthology, right? It's an anthology on African American humanism. And the second one I want to bring your attention to is written by Anthony B. Penn. Anthony B. Penn, by these hands, a documentary history of African American humanism. Okay. Again, they have selected works from James Baldwin, Sterling Brown, Douglass, Du Bois, Hubert Harrison, Zora Neale Hurston, Benjamin Hayes, Alice Walker, Richard Wright. Let's go to the contribution of womanist scholars, womanist theologian, African American theologian, within the liberation tradition, also the womanist theological tradition. Again, the classic text is by Emily Tarnis. Okay, Womanist Ethics and the Cultural Production of Evil. Womanist Ethics and the Cultural Production of Evil. This is on sexuality in the Black Church. Again, from a Romanist perspective, is written by Kelly Brown Douglas. Sexuality in the Black Church, a Romanist perspective. And also, this book is on Black Womanist Ethics by Katie Kennan. So here we're talking about womanist theology, right? Here it is, Black Womanist Ethics. And another text I want to bring your attention to is called A Troubling in My Soul, Womanist Perspective on Evil and Suffering, by again Dr. Emily Tarnes. Had the pleasure to edit this book. Okay, and of course, Sisters in the Wilderness, the challenge of womanist God Talk, Sisters in the Wilderness by Dolores S. Williams, which is a classic text on the subject matter. And the last one I want to bring your attention to is Living Stones in the Household of God. Living Stones in the Household of God, the Legacy and Future of Black Theology. Living Stone in the Household of God, the Legacy and Future of Black Theology, which Linda E. Thomas edited. This is not a book on womanist theology, but it's on black liberation and womanist theology brought together. Okay, we're almost done. I have a few more texts to bring your attention to before I go. Now, where's the text here? There we go. Just bear with me. So, now, this is I guess I would argue this is the most important work that looks at race from a theological perspective. This is simply a tour de force, an intellectual tour de force, which James Cone calls this book an intellectual tour de force. This is a theological account of the problem of race by J. Cameron Carter. J. Cameron Carter is a good friend. I love this work. I think I was one of, when this book came out, I received a copy from the publisher to review, and Dr. Carter was happy with my review. Again, race a theological account. Carter looks at the work of James Cone, Charles H. Long. He looks at the work of Raboteau. He looks at the work of Immanuel Kant. He looks at the work of Frederick Douglass, Joanna Lee, and of course Maximus the Confessor, and even Gregory of Nyssa, whom he calls abolitionist intellectual. The church father Gregory of Nyssa, abolitionist intellectual. Major study, great work. And I want to bring your attention. I was talking about the problem. I mentioned a book about the problem of evil here by Emily, Dr. Tarnes. Now, I should have, when I was talking about this book, I should have mentioned Anthony B. Penn classic text, Suffering and Evil in Black Theology. Why, Lord? Suffering and Evil in Black Theology. So, what he tries to do, he tries to wrestle how black religion addresses the problem of evil in the world. Not only the problem of evil in the world, the problem of evil in the black culture. Okay. Now, there are two texts written by, classic texts written by New Testament scholars, biblical scholars, is the new then the Whisper Put on Flesh by Brian Blount, who's a fantastic New Testament scholar. I like everything he writes. So this book looks at New Testament ethics from an African American context, right? from the perspective of enslaved African American people in America. So he argues that these African slaves not only they imparted no new information to the biblical text, but they discovered in scripture, right, answers to their most pressing questions about the nature of evil, which is slavery, okay, and their quest for freedom. The second book I want to bring your attention to is an African American biblical interpretation, Stoning the Road We Trod. African American biblical interpretation. This text is, it was edited by the renowned scholar Ken Hope Felder, who has taught at Howard Divinity School for many years. He was a brilliant New Testament scholar. Contributors include Randall Bailey, uh, Felder himself, Lloyd Lewis, Clarice Martin, Renita Weems, Vincent L. Wimbush. And then, of course, one of the most important works on the problem of evil by an African American theologian or religious thinker is James Cone, The Cross and the Lynching Tree. The Cross and the Lynching Tree. This is a must read on the problem of evil. Now, the book here by Victor